Hey guys, what is up? For Oddschecker, I am your host Melissa, and we are bringing you guys week 4 of college football. I am joined with Alex and Joey, the sharpest of betters. Guys, how did week 3 go?
Week 3 went pretty well. We're off to a good start here. We're picking games carefully. I was 3-1 last week. Excuse me. Actually, I think I was 3-1 last week. I'm 8-4 overall. Moved to 3-1 on my picks of the week. So, if we could keep up 8-4, 3-1 for the entire year, that would be just fine with me over here.
I
Yeah,
do love a winning streak.
I went 2-2 last week. Had a tough beat on UTSA. I wanted that 3-1, but trying to go 3-1 this week.
Well, guys, if I'm not mistaken, you were both on Fresno State as well as a bonus.
We are going to talk some Pac-12 Mountain West football.
All right. I'll
Yeah.
let that go. We'll wait. But Joey, you got some picks for us. We'll start off with you. What are you looking at this week?
Yeah, first of all, I'm looking at SMU money line. It should be hovering around at Pick'em right now. They face TCU, who I'm not really sure what we're getting this year with TCU. They've played two really weak opponents in Colorado, who might be the worst Power 5 team in the country this year. That was held by Arizona or Vanderbilt. It looks very much so that it's Colorado this year. Colorado anything. So that win
So bad.
thrown out the window for me for TCU. And then TCU played an FCS Tarleton squad who's not really that good, and they blew them out. And now they've had 2 weeks off. Some people might be looking at a bye week as a good thing. I honestly kind of think it's a bad thing. They're a little out of rhythm. They haven't played any really team. They haven't really gotten hit in the mouth yet. And now they're about to go into a tough environment versus an SMU squad who just had a very tough loss at Maryland. SMU got woken up. This is a huge game for them. I think SMU bounces back and gets a win at home here. And then the second game I'm looking at, I almost thought this was an incorrect line the first time I saw it, but Wake Forest at home catching 7 to Clemson. I have Wake Forest lined as a small favorite in this game. I would have had them at like -1 or -1.5. Clemson just has not looked very impressive to me. And I think most people would agree with that. The defense has been good, but the defense hasn't necessarily looked that good the last 2 weeks against inferior teams. I mean, they allowed Furman to drive down the field multiple times, and Furman had chances to put up 20-plus points in that game. And then they played Louisiana Tech, who allowed them to go up and down the field for a lot of yards. Clemson just has not looked very impressive to me. Wake Forest has Sam Hartman back in the backfield for them. He's throwing the ball all over the yard. And I think Wake Forest kind of had a little bit of a trap game this past weekend against Liberty. Maybe a little look ahead to Clemson. You know, they almost got upset at home as 17-point favorites, but they pulled out a win. That's all that matters. And now they get that game that they were looking towards. I think they're going to get up for this game, and I think they're going to win this game outright. And then also looking at Iowa State on the money line at home as a small favorite. A very good trend earlier in the season has been unranked or higher ranked teams against lower ranked teams at home who are favorites. We saw Washington this past weekend, who was not ranked, blew out Michigan State, who was ranked. We've seen the Baylor and BYU games the last couple of weeks where an unranked or higher ranked team has been a favorite and has blown them out or won at home. We're getting a similar spot here with Baylor as a fairly highly ranked team against Iowa State, and it's hovering at a pick'em, and Iowa State is even a small favorite on some books. I think the Iowa State defense is legit, and I'm not really sold on Baylor yet either. So I think Iowa State is going to grab a home win here.
All right. Well, you've sold me. We've got Iowa State, we've got Wake Forest, and SMU. So let's see what happens, Joe. And then we've got Alex's picks up next. Alex?
Yeah, Joe, I like what you're doing there with Iowa State. I think, especially after what BYU showed against Oregon, if we get a little bit transitive in this early season, maybe Baylor was not actually so impressive getting BYU to overtime in Provo a few weeks ago. So I like what you're doing there. For me, I want to start with Maryland and Michigan. I'm taking Michigan -17 here. Part of this is just that I am an alumnus of the University of Maryland. I feel like I understand this program and what tends to happen to the Terps in big spots like this. Too many times I have watched Maryland get boat raced in games like this when they play the cream of the crop in the Big Ten It very rarely even goes competitively. There have been precious few exceptions to that. I think the same is going to occur in this case, mainly because I think Michigan's going to do whatever it wants to on offense with JJ McCarthy and those receivers that they have, and also, obviously Blake Corum, a powerful running game that I think Maryland's defense is just going to be outclassed by. Maryland, you mentioned, Joe, the SMU result in College Park last week. Maryland got pushed around quite a bit by SMU in that game. An American Athletic Conference team. Maryland had to rely on some turnovers, including right by their own goal line, in order to keep that game manageable and to ultimately win it. I don't think those chances are going to be there against Michigan. We don't know a ton about Michigan. They've basically played 3 glorified scrimmages with Colorado State, Hawaii, and UConn. But I think they are the much, 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 much more talented team here. They're playing at home, and I do worry a bit about Talia Tagovailoa and the Maryland passing game against that defense, just given some of the guys that Michigan has. Going out west as well this week, USC at Oregon, I'm on the under at 68. So 2 really good offenses, in particular USC's, and USC's defense is shaky. So why are we on the under? It's because it's a big number. 68 is a lot of points here. I think it is important to look at how these teams play. Nobody is going to run much tempo in these games. These teams are both fairly deliberate when they have the ball. By time of possession per play, they are both among the slower teams in FBS. Oregon State really run heavy, USC less so, but still far from a team that's chucking it around all day. And I think that Oregon State scoring so far has largely been about finishing drives in the red zone. They've scored 86% of their red zone drives they've got in the end zone. That's a really big number. USC's defense has actually been pretty tight in the red zone, so I think there could be some problems finishing drives for the Beavers here. Just feels like the ingredients are not quite there to justify this big of a total, even as good as these offenses are. So big number, go under. That's my motto here.
All right. Well, I love that we're betting another USC game this week. I really think that they're going to at least make the playoffs. I know last week I said they're a dark horse, might make the championship. They performed so well last week. I'm gonna move it back though, just in case, and say the playoffs. But we'll see what happens with these 2
Bold.
teams.
It's bold. I'm not quite there, but as I've said, I love the spirit. I do. And you were right last week. You were right.
I was for one. No, I'm 2-2 now. So we'll see. I'm 50-50. You're up plus.
Yeah.
You're right back where you should be in those things, because it's always even money with me. But guys, it is time for our favorite pick of the week. Well, my favorite picks of the week, and it is your top picks. Alex, I'm going to start with you. You are taking on the Virginia Cavaliers game, and they are taking on the Syracuse Orange, one of the people from my home state. It is week 4. We are at the JMA Wireless Dome. The Cavaliers look to build on their 2-1 lead. And the Syracuse Orange, which is actually super fun, are looking for their first 4-0 start since 2018. That could be fun.
Yeah, it could be fun. Look, I like Syracuse this year. I think they're a lot of fun. They are not necessarily the most polished team in the world, but they're fun. They are 3-0, as you mentioned. Garrett Schrader is kind of one of those bad, good quarterbacks who doesn't quite look right a lot of the time when he's back there, but he makes the throws, and he's certainly been doing it to start this year. But I think 9.5 is a bit much for me to feel good about Syracuse in this game. So I'm on the Who's plus 9.5. I think UVA has issues, and they almost lost, excuse me, to Old Dominion last week, another in-state team at home in Charlottesville. The only reason they didn't is because Brennan Armstrong led a drive in the nick of time to win it on a field goal when they would have lost otherwise. But I think, again, it comes down to drive finishing. UVA was in the red zone 7 times in that game and scored 1 touchdown. I don't think that kind of futility is likely to repeat itself. I'm kind of, at an early time in the year, I'm going to be really suspicious of how much we should trust results from a forward-looking perspective when team's big problem is, all right, you weren't finishing drives, or you finished so many drives in a way that is likely either way to kind of regress to the mean. I think that Brennan Armstrong is a better quarterback than he has shown so far. I think Garrett Schrader probably a little worse. No disrespect to him whatsoever. So I think everyone kind of comes back towards the median here a little bit. 9.5 is a lot for Cuse to cover. I do believe in them this year. I think this is a bowl team, but I like the Who's as my pick of the week plus 9.5 at the Dome.
All right. Well, I'm a big fan of it. Joe, now it is your turn for your pick of the week. You are taking on Michigan State, who opens on slim favorites against Minnesota. Early Monday, the easy money is coming in on Minnesota. Joe, where's your money going on?
Yeah, I'm going to be rolling with the Spartans and Michigan State on the money line here. They're in a very similar spot to SMU this week. Michigan State is coming off a bad loss where they got blown out by Washington. They gave up a ton of yards. But Michigan State's big problem over the last 2 seasons in their passing defense. They've really played pretty good up front, but their secondary and their linebackers have gotten torched in the mid-level. They've gotten torched in the deep passing game. But Minnesota is not that type of team. Minnesota is a team who is committed to the run. They're going to run no matter what. They're going to run their offense. They really don't run any passing plays that aren't off the play action or anything like that. They have Tanner Morgan, who's very experienced. But Tanner Morgan is a mid-level quarterback. He's not the same type of talent level that Washington had in Michael Penix Jr., who actually just lit them up on a very impressive performance. And then Minnesota, in the same sense of TCU, we don't really know who Minnesota is yet. They blew out a Western Illinois team, who is one of the worst FCS teams in the country. They blew out Colorado, who was also a similar opponent as TCU. Colorado just can't do anything, so you have to throw that game out the window. And just Minnesota, I don't really know what we're getting out of them, and this is their first real test. I love Michigan State in a bounce back at home in a home Big Ten game. I think they get up for this game, and I think they get a win.
Wow. I mean, one of my favorite bosses was from Michigan State. So I am all about this line. I love it. Are you guys ready for my pick?
I am ready. I'm excited.
Okay, Alex, please don't shoot it down right away. I am looking at the Texas A&M school. They are taking on number 10 Arkansas. It is a very short line. It's -1.5, and I am going with the Texas A&M, who are the favorite. Guys, any first initial thoughts on this one?
You know, I like Texas A&M in this game. I was a little surprised that it was this short of a line. Arkansas, but I'm not really impressed with Arkansas either. Arkansas looked a little better last year compared to this year so far. Arkansas struggled against Missouri State, who's a good FCS team, but they were losing for a majority of that game. And Texas A&M, I think, is kind of a new team now with Max Johnson. They had a lot of drives that stalled, but they moved the ball better than they had in the past couple of games with Haynes King. So I actually like this pick a lot, and I think Texas A&M is a bye team for the rest of the season with Max Johnson.
Yeah, I think I would have taken if I was picking a side in this game, I'd be on yours, Melissa. I think I like A&M at home in what is basically a pick 'em. Obviously not exactly, but close enough. I don't know that I love A&M for the season because I'm not sure that I'm a believer in the offense. But I think that they are physically superior to Arkansas and are likely to show that in this game.
They have a lot of 5-star recruits, and I mean, they just beat Miami, who is another ranked team at home. So it'll be very interesting to see what happens. No, I'm just kidding. The Aggies suffered an upset loss in week 2, falling to Appalachian State, and then
You're right. I mean, it was an impressive bounce back against Miami. I think
Appalachian State, so we're definitely going to have some worry here.
Well, App State is tough. I mean, look.
Talk about App State for 5 seconds. They have been killing it this season.
Yeah.
It has been a wild. If you're watching that like exclusively, it is just like a wild game to watch. No, am I the only one who's going crazy every time I watch these guys play?
Hey, the Texas A&M game was another one of those trends where the higher ranked team as a favorite ended up covering. So just another thing to watch.
It'll be fun. They have a challenging schedule. They're in the midst of a 7-game stretch while they are facing 5 ranked teams during that. I think they get it done. The Razorbacks have 3-0 wins just over Cincinnati, South Carolina, Missouri State, but they haven't been too dominant, and 2 of those victories were less than 10 points. Let's take a leap of faith here, and we'll take Texas A&M and see what happens.
Let's see it. I'm into it.
I love that you guys are both on my side because sometimes I get worried when you're not. So
well, you're right last week on USC. So
maybe you should have been against me then, so I could win. We'll see what happens. We'll figure out the trends next week. But guys, we are gonna close up the show here. This is college football week 4. I am here with Alex and Joe. Be sure to make sure you follow them on Twitter because their picks are fire. And we will see you guys next Monday for another episode, week 5. Let's see what happens. Happy betting.